Hi everyone, and today I'm looking at a brand new autofocus lens from Samyang for Sony's mirrorless E-mount cameras, the AF 35mm f1.4 FE, the FE meaning it can give a full frame image. I'm a little excited about this new release as I'm thinking of investing in a full frame Sony camera sometime, and this is exactly the kind of lens I'd really want to get, and the price of Sony's equivalent Zeiss lens is around £1,400. This Samyang lens is due to cost only $800 or around £600 in the UK. Quite a lot of money in absolute terms, but a huge undercut of the competition, less than half the price of the Zeiss lens. And on a full frame camera, 35mm is one of my favourite focal lengths. It's a nice wide angle, but at 35mm you can still get a little emphasis on your subject and background separation. If you're using one of Sony's less expensive APS-C cameras, then that focal length is the full frame equivalent of 52mm, a standard focal length, giving you a lot more emphasis on your subject. And at f1.4, this lens lets in tons of light for shooting indoors or in darker situations. Plus, you can get very nicely out of focus backgrounds at f1.4, making it a really creative option. Any 35mm lens with a bright aperture is a fantastically versatile piece of kit in the right hands. Well, let's look at this new lens's build quality. The moment it comes out of the box, you'll notice that it is big. Weighing 700 grams or about 1.5 pounds, it's made of metal and very tough and substantial. So it doesn't really balance too well on a little mirrorless camera, as you can see here. But to be fair, the competing Sony Zeiss lens itself is actually the same size. Perhaps it's a physical necessity for this kind of optical design. Anyway, the build quality of this simple lens is great. It's solid and finished in brushed black paint. Its one control point is the large manual focus ring, which turns smoothly but quite loosely. The focus system works by wire, and when you're shooting in manual focus mode, it's quite responsive. The autofocus motor is fairly quick and almost silent. It only makes a very quiet clicking sound when it's micro-adjusting. I found that autofocus motor to be very accurate in my tests. It seemed to focus on the ball 100% of the time. This lens is not image stabilized, but it does come with quite a deep lens hood. Overall, the build quality and the autofocus are both great. It's just that this lens is quite big. Alright, image quality. Hopefully, in about a month's time, I'll have a full frame Sony camera to test this on, and I'll post an image quality lowdown then. For now, let's see how it performs on a high-resolution APS-C camera, my 24-megapixel Sony A6300. At f1.4, in the middle of the image, sharpness is fantastic and contrast is good. The eagle-eyed among you might notice just a hint of purple fringing. Let's look into the corners. Wow, even at f1.4, the resolution and picture quality are astonishing. This lens is sharp, and there's no visible chromatic aberration either. If you stop down to f2, you see a tiny increase in contrast in the corners and in the middle, and any traces of that purple fringing are now gone. If you stop down to f2.8, there's a little jump in quality, and now we see absolute pinpoint sharpness and contrast from the middle and into the corners. Even down to f8, it stays this sharp. f11 is a little softer due to the effects of diffraction. Overall though, on an APS-C camera, the Samyang 35mm f1.4 is simply a stellar optic. It easily yields the sharpest and cleanest images I've ever seen on my Sony camera. I can't wait to test it on full frame. And when I do test this lens on a full frame camera, I'll give you some results for distortion and vignetting, as they're definitely not a problem on APS-C. So let's see about close-up image quality. The lens can focus as closely as about 30 cm, around average for a 35mm lens. At f1.4, image quality is actually a bit soft when shooting close-up. f2 is not much better, but f2.8 is sharper and f4 is very sharp. When it comes to working against bright light, the lens performs okay. When bright lights are right there in the picture, then there's a little flaring, but not too much. There's very little peripheral flaring. And finally, bokeh. The quality of this lens's bokeh is very smooth with deeply out of focus backgrounds. With less out of focus backgrounds, you might notice a little outlining in bright points of light at f1.4. Overall, the lens's performance speaks for itself. It really is amazingly sharp. The picture quality is just so clean and detailed. It's a very large lens, which I don't like, but its mechanical quality is great, with a very reliable autofocus system. I can't wait to test it on a full frame camera. You'll have to come back to my channel in about 4 weeks' time to see the results. In the meantime though, all I can say is that for Sony mirrorless camera users with large camera bags, this lens definitely comes highly recommended.